It's a crisp spring morning in Manhattan. A perfect day for a march down Broadway. But on this day, for this crowd, the Big Apple isn't exactly rolling out the red carpet.
5, 6, 7, 8,
There are delays and confusion about where to gather. Mayor Rudy Giuliani waits until the very last minute to issue the necessary permit. But several thousand show up anyway, and eventually this ragtag army begins the long trek to Battery Park. The marchers have all come together this day for various reasons, but with one common voice: to protest the United States policies on marijuana. The marchers are cordially escorted by a phalanx of New York's finest. Or so it seems. Business as usual in America's war on drugs.
They're not going to get rid of us that easy.
For the last 30 years, a hardcore band of activists has been fighting the war on marijuana in what they see as a struggle for truth and justice. One man among them stands apart. He has been described as a cult folk hero, a boisterous rabble-rouser, a crazy man. His name is often mispronounced. He likes to say it rhymes with terror. But one thing is certain. Because of him, we enter the next millennium with a new knowledge of an ancient plant. A plant whose present-day revival was sparked by this man's 1985 best-selling book. The book revealed the lost history of the hemp plant, and in doing so, lit a fire under a legion of followers the world over. Its title is The Emperor Wears No Clothes. Its author is known as the father of today's burgeoning hemp movement. His name is Jack Herer. At 60 years of age, Jack Herer has been stumping for hemp nearly half his life. It's been a long, strange, and decidedly uphill journey. But he trudges onward despite ill health, somehow turning on the passion when the curtain goes up.
They've outlawed the natural, and I say we've got to take it back by standing together. Make it a million man march next year. Make it 2 million. Come to New York next year. Mayday.
There was a time, not too many years ago, that Jack Herer's ideas about hemp were deemed irrational, extreme, off the wall. But today those harsh judgments seem like a distant memory.
Jack Herer's great genius was in introducing a broader vision of the economic value of the hemp plant.
I didn't know anything about hemp or the fact that there was a movement until Jack sat me down one night.
He is what you might call a force of nature. I've met several people in my lifetime who I would judge as having such fiery intensity within them that approve of them or disapprove of them, you have to acknowledge that they are forces of nature.
I saw Jack as a Michiganer, a crazy man. And particularly when it came to this whole idea that hemp was going to somehow revolutionize the world and revolutionize the marijuana reform movement. And so Michiganer is the right word for Jack.
Jack Herer was an unlikely candidate for Emperor of Hemp. He was born into a conservative, middle-class Jewish family in 1939 and grew up in Buffalo, New York. He led a normal, happy life there until his 41-year-old father died of a heart attack when Jack was only 14. Within a span of 3 years, Jack went from Boy Scout to high school dropout. To avoid a 2-week jail term for driving after dark with a junior license, 17-year-old Jack Herer enlisted in the Army. He quickly adapted to military life. The gung-ho soldier served honorably as an MP in post-war Korea. By the mid-60s, Jack was out of the Army and back into a normal middle-class lifestyle. Wife, 3 small children, a ranch house in the San Fernando Valley in California, and a series of routine managerial jobs. Army duty had made him proud of his country. He was a Goldwater Republican. He believed in old-fashioned American values, and he supported the country's growing involvement in Vietnam.
Well, I had done 3 years in the military. I believed I was right on guy. I believed America was always the good guy. It was, always the most decent, right on people on the earth.
Silver in my tambourine, held before man, filled a pretty dream. Give me pennies, I'll take anything. Now listen while I play my green tambourine.
The 60s upheavals offended Jack. He especially had a very low regard for the anti-war protesters.
I thought that they were the most un-American kids in the world.
And what evil spell had turned previously well-behaved, well-dressed, middle-class white kids into loathsome, rebellious hippies? To Jack and the establishment, marijuana must have had something to do with it. From the time marijuana first showed up in police blotters and newspaper headlines in the early years of the century, its use had been limited primarily to Mexican immigrants and black jazz musicians. Marijuana was hardly noticed at all until it was discovered by the white middle class in the 60s, when millions of baby boomers actually inhaled. Coincidence or not, they began burning American flags, ROTC buildings, and draft cards. Even future leaders of the free world tried marijuana back then. Jack hated marijuana for its association with the counterculture, but he also had deep-rooted personal fears deriving from the reefer madness propaganda of his youth.
In the schools, they'd have this guy in a dark fedora hat, and he looked like Vincent Price, as shady as he could be, and he would be going, psh. You try one of these for free, kid, you know. And then all sorts of devil things. Next thing you were shooting heroin, you know. You were doing cocaine. You were doing things and exotic named drugs that I had no experience with, and I was sure that this was going to happen to me.
The 60s rising tide of social change eventually swept in and altered the course of Jack's life. In 1967, he and his wife divorced. One day, a couple of years later, a new girlfriend asked him a question.
She said, "Jack, have you ever smoked marijuana?" I said, "Of course not, no. I've never smoked marijuana." She said, "Well, I think you should." I was feeling sensations that I didn't even know a human being could experience. And I said, why is this illegal? And she said, she doesn't know. I began to hear the protesters about the war in Vietnam, and their words had real meanings, textures. They weren't just talking about, I don't want to fight because I'm a coward, which is the way I thought of it, my ignorant or brutish way before.
Peace and freedom became big issues for Jack. So did the environment. But as the 70s began, the journey of Jack Herer from Goldwater Republican to Emperor of Hemp was only just beginning. Jack's transformation gained some momentum in 1973 when he satisfied a lifelong urge to write. He and a friend co-authored a little cartoon book about marijuana titled simply Grass. Much to his surprise, Grass became an underground hit, selling about 35,000 copies. Almost overnight, Jack gained a reputation as an authority on marijuana.
And now everybody thought I knew all about pot. I knew every little subtle thing. And I still didn't even know if I ran across a marijuana plant growing in a field, I wouldn't even recognize it.
Come sit with me in the grass.
Like millions of other Americans back then, Jack knew nothing of marijuana's history and had no idea that marijuana was actually hemp, the non-intoxicating but still very much illegal variety of the ancient Cannabis sativa plant. But as sales of his little grass book raised his profile, strangers began to come up to him with intriguing bits of information.
They come up to me and say, Mr. Herer, do you know that they used to make paper from marijuana? Some other kid would come up to me and say, do you know that they used to make all their sails and clothes out of marijuana?
The idea that it had other uses, that you could make paper out of it, that you could make cloth out of it, you could make cord out of it, you could make oil, you could make medicine. Those had never occurred to Jack, and boy, did he take that idea and run with it.
Jack was amazed to discover hemp's deep connection to mankind. For over 10,000 years, hemp was undeniably our most useful plant. Our ancestors depended on hemp's exceptionally strong fiber, cellulose-rich pulp, and highly nutritious seeds. The plant was cultivated and used throughout history for food, clothing, fuel and medicine, as well as for sails, rope, shelter, and paper. In colonial America, hemp was not only legal, but essential to survival.
Washington planted hemp at Mount Vernon in the 1790s while he was president in an attempt to start a home industry so that the United States would not have to depend on Italy and on Russia and on England for their hemp fiber. This was just after the Revolution, and the United States was trying madly not to have to rely on foreign